Hi everyone, my name is Tatiana, and in front of me today I have the Hero Arts My Monthly Hero Kit for the month of April 2023. So you can either get the regular kit, which are these products here, or if you like you can pay a little extra and you can get some extra ingredients, which this month are these 3 ingredients. Okay, let's get right into some card making. I start out by using this background stamp, and with the very first stamp I make a black dot right in the middle of that white card. And as you can see, my brain here says, oh wait, what is that? But I managed to stamp right over it somehow. So if you make mistakes, try not to worry too much about them. Now I'm taking the green apple ink and I want to make a green jug for the front of my card. And so this is how I'm going about creating some texture within the jug. I'm going to swipe the ink pad repeatedly back and forth over the card, and right now I'm using the edge of the ink pad. So at first I was using it flat and now I'm using the edge, and that creates some texture. And so all you have to do is then stamp your jug and line it up so that you like the way the ink pattern is going to be on the jug. And as you can see here, you wind up with a different jug depending on how you place your stamp. So the first one I wasn't happy with because there was a weird pattern going on there. So then I tried again, and I don't actually end up using any of these because I didn't like any of them, but I'm just showing you how I did it. And the third one here, I actually managed to get no color at the bottom. So anyway, I'm showing you that I'm cutting it out, and I come back and I've got the one that I like, and then you have to trim out the inside of the handle because it looks a little weird when the inside of the handle is also green. So I took my X-Acto knife and here I am doing that, and it just pops right out afterwards. No big deal. Now I'm going to Copic color these flowers, and I'm just using 2 shades of pink. Super easy here. Not too much blending at all. The only thing is I used VersaFine ink because I forgot that I was using Copics, and you should not use VersaFine ink. But this also shows you that if you do use VersaFine ink, which is a pigment ink and is not good for Copic coloring, that if you're really careful, will turn out just fine, because I didn't touch the black lines, I guess. Anyway, it turns out nicely, and I die cut it, and then this strip of green is cut from the piece of cardstock that I just made for the jug. I just felt that there should be some sort of separating line between what I'm hoping appears to be the backsplash tile of a kitchen shelf. And so here we are with the sentiment, and I'm going to stamp the sentiment with black VersaFine pigment ink, and it always does such a great job. And as you can see, I made another black mark on my white card, but once again we're going to cover that right up, and this time we're going to cover it up with the jug. Now the jug I'm going to put the foam tape on the back of, and then you don't even have to adhere your flowers, you just have to sink them into the jug the way you like, press down, and away you go with embellishing. Now I'm taking some enamel dots from this sheet in a coordinating color, and I just thought that it might make a little bit of extra texture on the front of the jug, and so it does. I think it turns out looking quite nice. It looks just like a jug sitting on a kitchen counter, just the way I had hoped. Love that background stamp, by the way. That would look really good with some tone-on-tone texturing. Now, the next part you may want to fast forward through if you're not into watching me watercolor for a few minutes, but what I did here, as you can see, is I took the inks and I smooshed them out on a mat. I added water to them, and then I added water, a lot of water, sprayed a lot of water on the die cuts. Now right away I could see that the colors included with the kit were going to make earth tones, and I do end up using those vases, and that's perfectly okay, but I just wanted some extra colors. So I remembered that I had these Corinne Brush Marker Pros, and all they are is a marker with a silicone sort of tip, and they're just filled with highly concentrated watercolor ink. And I just wanted some extra colors, and so they're really easy to use. All you have to do is wet your surface. Well, I mean, there's different ways to use them, but in this case, I'm wetting the surface with a lot of water, and then I'm just touching the tip of the pen to the surface and sort of touching, dabbing. And as you can see, when there's a lot of water, you just have to touch the tip down and it kind of goes on its own. It's kind of fun to see what you're going to turn out with. You have control, but you kind of don't have control in a little way, which is fun. Now, at some point here, I realized that I was going to end up with some earth-toned vases or urns, and I was also going to be able to create my own colors with these crayon markers. So I started thinking about the fact that there was probably going to be more than one on a card, and I wanted them to match. So the ones in the bottom right, in the middle, and now the top left are all going to have the same color scheme because I'm using the same markers. Now I'm also using a paintbrush to kind of move them around, and I want to make sure that they all match, so that I'm using the exact same colors. And I'm almost done here. I just decided at the last minute that they could use a little touch of lime green. And I'm wetting them again, adding some more colors. And then I think I'm going to bring in the lime green here at some point. And so what I ended up with was 3 sets of vases. One set was earth tones, one set was this purpley, pinky, cool colored set. And as you can see at the end, I will add green. It's coming up here at some point. And I also ended up with the one second from the right, which doesn't really match any of the others, and I like it quite a lot. There's the green that I'm adding in. Now, this was the first step in coloring these. Now, I did use another medium after this, and I'm going to show you that in just one second, because when these dried, they looked great. I thought they looked fantastic. You could use them just as they are, but I thought I was really into coloring at this point, which is surprising for me because I'm not much of a coloring person, but I pulled out my new set of pencil crayons. I have Derwent Inktense pencil crayons. So I started by shading just one side of the vases, and I thought that looked pretty good. But then at some point I thought, wow, that shading on one side looks so good. I've seen people shade both sides. So then I went ahead and I shaded both sides of the vases, and I thought that looked pretty good too. So then I got really into coloring, and I thought, ooh, this is really fun. So I'm just outlining the sides of the vase, and in the end I end up outlining the top too. And here I'm just creating some more texture on the vases by just creating vertical lines. I got really into it at one point, as you can see. And then I started coloring the inside. I started using the pre-created colors from the watercolors. I just sort of souped them up a bit with these pencil crayons. I kind of defined the lines, and then I sort of colored them in a bit. And I really, really like the way that these turned out. Here I'm adding some cracks to the vase with some dark, or I'm hoping it looks like cracks, with some dark brown. And just going over it with some colors, and it just became really fun at some point. I sound surprised because I'm not, as you may know, I'm not really that into coloring, but there could be a future in coloring for me, I think. Anyway, there they are, all finished. And now I'm going to start creating the cards. So for the first card, I wanted it to look like the vases were sitting on a shelf. And so I wanted the shelf also to be a little bit 3D. So I cut out some strips of pink paper, all the same size, and then I just stuck them together so that they would be a little bit thicker. And then for the top strip, I took the Purple Galaxy ink, and as you can see, I'm just swiping it along the textured cardstock. And it's kind of neat when you swipe ink along textured cardstock, it creates a textured pattern. Now I'm going to make some splatters on the background, and what I'm doing is using Tim Holtz ink, which is a fairly liquid ink, but if you have, or paint, I'm using Tim Holtz paint, and I'm using his splatter brush, and I'm just dipping it in and pulling the bristles back and letting them go, and it makes a uniform splatter. You can use a paintbrush to do this. Just if you're using paint, add some water to it, because the Tim Holtz paint is already quite liquid and you don't really need to use this water. But if you're using a regular acrylic paint, just spritz some water in there and mix it around first. And be sure to dry. You must dry it really well. I'm only showing you a few seconds of drying there, but I let that dry for probably 2 minutes, because if you swipe your hand across a paint splatter, it's going to ruin your card. So here I am taking the colored piece of shelf paper and adding it to the other 4 strips. And there's a peel off sticky thing on the back, so all I have to do is peel that off later on and stick it. I use the crosshatch stamp here to make some shadow at the bottom. And here we go. I'm going to peel it off, and I'm just going to stick it right there at the bottom. And the reason I put the shelf at the bottom and not halfway up the card is because this is already a 5 by 7 inch card, and by the time you get the urns or the vases on there and you put the foliage in, it takes up the whole card. So I didn't have the choice of putting the shelf halfway up the card. Now I'm going to stamp the same purple ink on a piece of white paper a few times, just in case I mess up. It's always good to have something to fall back onto. And after I do that, I'm going to cut out that saying with the die. Very simple. Use a little piece of washi tape so that it doesn't run around when it gets into the die cutting machine. And then I did the same thing here. I put 2 or 3 layers of cardstock underneath the sentiment so that it would stick up a bit and match the rest of the card. Okay, so here we are assembling the card, and once again I've got foam tape on the back. And when I stick it down, I don't have to put glue all over the back of the leaves because the vase is holding the leaves in place. And this allows the leaves to stick up a little bit and create even more texture on the card. So it makes it really nice. Now, here I am adding the sentiment with a little bit of glue pen, which I love to use on smaller items. I'm trying to use my tweezers more because I find that I prefer using my fingers, but I often have ink on my fingers and then I end up ruining things. So I'm trying to force myself to use those tweezers, and they are quite helpful. Okay, so I'm putting it on a 5 by 7 card base. I cut it down just slightly, I think 1/16 of an inch, and that card is finished. Card number 1. Okay, we're on to card number 2. For card number 2, I took the washi tape and I ripped it at the top on an angle. And as you can see with washi tape, stick it down, peel it right back up, nobody knows. And I do this a few times because I'm not happy with the placement. Now, I'm not trying to get these words looking like they're together, but this washi tape is very forgiving. It just seems like the words always look like they're going together. But you don't have to do that. You can just put them down, and right there you can see they're not really straight in a line, and it looks just fine. Now at this point I thought, I think I'd like a little more white space on this card. So I go back and I start peeling up the washi tape and replacing it a little further down just so that there's a little more white space. I wanted it to be like more of like 2/3 pattern, 1/3 white space. I think it ends up being more 75%, but whatever. It's less than it was before, and it looks just fine. And as you can see, this washi tape is really, I think it's one of my favorites in my collection now. At first I was like, yeah, it's okay. But you can see it even has like a little faux paint splatter on the background. So there's script and then there's this faux paint splatter, which makes it a very interesting washi tape. Anyway, here I am trimming off the rest. Very simple to do. And once we do that, I'm going to smooth it down with my fingers to make sure that it's really on there well. And here we bring in that vase that is not like the other vases. It didn't really have any mates, so I put it alone on a card. I've cut out some black leaves, and these green leaves are cut from the same card that I used to make the jug on the first card. So I'm just tucking them in there, and once again, you don't have to glue these leaves down if you put some foam tape on the back of your vase. So I'm just arranging the arrangement as I think looks good, gingerly picking up the vase, fussing a little bit more, and we're just going to stick it right down there, and the leaves are free to blow in the wind and stick up. And you don't have to put foam tape on them, and you don't have to worry about glue squishing out from underneath, and you don't have to worry about anything. You just push, 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 and you're done. Okay, so now this time I'm using the green apple ink to match the foliage that I used it for, and we'll stamp that down once, twice. Am I going to stamp that again? No, twice. And there we go, card number 2. All right, I think we're on card number 3. So for card number 3, we are going to take the butter bar ink and swipe it across the paper, as you can see. And then I'm going to go back and make some textural lines, once again using the edge of the ink pad. And you can make them as straight or non-straight as you like. And the thing about this ink is it dries beautifully, so you have to do this numerous times because otherwise it'll just dry into each other. But the more you do it, the more textural your background will be because you'll be layering the ink on top of itself. So as you can see, I'm doing it quite a few times here, trying to get as much of a striation going as I can. And I'm happy with the way it turned out. It's going to dry back. It's not going to look like this when you're done. It's going to dry back quite a bit. But you're still going to have, there you can see it, you're still going to have some sort of texture. Now for this card, I decided that I would just use a tiny little bit of that on the edge. And at first I was covering the entire edge of the card with this tape. But then I thought, I don't really like that. I think I'm just going to put smaller pieces, have it look a little more fragmented. So I just I ripped it back up, I cut off a couple of little pieces, and I just adhered them to the card. And I think it looks better that way. Now I'm going to, is this where I create the foliage? Yes, I was ahead of myself with the other card. This is where I just create the foliage for the card. I guess I put these in the backwards order. I didn't even realize it. Sorry about that. Well, I'm showing you. This is how I did it. I swiped the green ink the same way I just did with the butter bar ink, and as you can see, it makes just gives it a little more interest. Now this is the crosshatch stamp, and you probably can't tell from this angle, but I'm using just my index fingers to push down in various places so that it just creates some shadow effect. I didn't really want just one stamp of this. I just wanted to create like sort of a shadow for the vase to sit on. And there we go. I stick the foliage in, and once again I'm just going to put the foam tape on top and leave the leaves free. Now for this card I used root beer ink because it was an earth toned or a warm colored card, so I felt that brown was more appropriate than black. And I'll stamp that 3 times, and that card will be all done. Oh, not done yet. I have to put the glue on the back, of course. This is the most important part, is centering the card, getting the landing correct. I slowed this right down to show you. Important, important. And I did it. Now I'm using a white gel pen to just add some extra light effects, I guess you would call them, on the side. Really, really simple. Just adds a little extra something. And then I've got the stencil, and I'm using the little dots and just going around using the little dots. I think at one point, I don't think I showed it, but I think I overdid it slightly. If I had just done this one layer, I think it would have been fine, but then I went back and put a little few extra, but I don't know if anybody had really noticed. I know I noticed, but anyway, I like the way that looks. And now we're on to the last card, and once again using the crosshatch stamp, and this time I'm going to just put it down once. And as you can see, I've tested other colors on the back. I tested root beer and caramel, and I didn't like the way those looked, so the one I'm using here is Pumpkin Pie by Hero Arts, and it just gave the shade that I wanted. Now, I left all of this in because I want you to see how nitpicky I am. I got right there. I liked the way it looked, and then I fussed around with it so many times. I don't understand why I do this. You know, it looks great, and then I guess I'm thinking there could be another way that it might look even better, so I just keep moving things around, and then I I end up with it in the exact situation that it was at the very beginning. So that was kind of a waste of time, but whatever, just showing you the way I drive myself crazy. So once I have it in the right position, I take a tiny piece of washi tape and I'm taping the inside of the flower to the outside, because I'm going to put foam tape on the back, and you need the blue part of the flower to, you know, be at one with the rest of the flower. Now I'm using 5 little foam dots here, but if I was you, I would probably just use 1. I don't know. I guess I just had those beside me, so that's why I was using them, but there's no need to use 5 on one flower. You can just use 1. Now, even when I get them stuck down, I'm still not happy. I'm like, why shouldn't I move them closer together? Maybe that would be a good idea. And then I do move them closer together, and guess what? I don't like that either, so then I move them apart again. I just like to torment myself sometimes. Okay, and then this time I think I am using caramel, because I just want I want it to fade into the background. And there we go. We've got the sentiment fading into the background so that you can barely even see it. And then I decided I was going to put it on a pink background, but I thought it would look nice offset. So I just trimmed these 2 sides of the card down a little bit. Excuse me. And I offset it because you don't see that a lot in card making, and I kind of like the way that looks. Just a little hint of that background color. And we're going to put some glue on here, and then we're going to put it on an A2 card base. Get the corners all squared up. And then I felt like the vase was too plain, so I thought, wow, I've got this stencil, why don't I just use it? So I did use it, and I used the stripes portion of it, and watch how easy it is to change out that vase. All you have to do is put a little glue on the back and stick it right on top of the plain vase. And you know, I even bought the Hero transfers this month. I forgot all about them. I didn't even use them, so I don't know. I might have to make some more cards later on. And that completes this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm going to show you some finished pictures of the cards. I hope this inspires you. I hope that you get your kit out and you make lots of cards. And I hope that if you enjoyed this video, that you'll think about subscribing and possibly even hitting the thumbs up button. And until next time, thanks for watching. Bye.